Today we're going to talk about rowing and low back pain. It's really important to note that back pain can be different for everybody. Even if you have the same injury on an X-ray or an MRI, everybody's back pain is going to present a little bit differently for them. Some people might row and it gets rid of their pain. Other people, it might make their back pain worse. So in this video specifically, I'm going to go over the things on the rowing machine to pay attention to while you're rowing that could be contributing to low back pain that you might be having. Now, if you're a person who feels better with rowing, fantastic. These are good things to kind of know for your form and to avoid your back possibly getting aggravated. The most recent study that I've looked at regarding back pain and injuries in general for rowing is from 2020 by Arumugan. And I hope I'm not butchering this person's name, but basically what was found is that 53% of the injuries that happen with rowing are low back pain related. It is important to note that all the research that I found is coming from people looking at people rowing on the water. So not necessarily rowing on the rowing machine. So what the research found is that with low back pain, it actually came down to your form and biomechanics as well as overtraining. Those were the main two components. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into those. The first thing to pay attention to is your form on the rowing machine. So we're going to break this down into 4 different reasons or movement considerations on the rowing machine. First part that we're going to talk about is actually just sitting on the rowing machine. So I know that we just usually go and sit on it and think that that's nothing, but we actually want to pay attention to our position. If I come and just sit onto the rowing machine, I'm not really paying attention to anything on my butt except that I'm not really too far forward or I'm not too far back where I'm gonna fall off of the seat, and I'm just looking for comfort position, right? Now, the downside of this is if you just come and sit onto the seat or really wherever you are, if you try to kind of sit upright, what happens to your back? Do you get a big arch in your back, or do you feel like it's kind of in a neutral position? That's what we want to look for. If I just sit down and I come into my position, essentially what's happening is my pelvis is actually rotated a little bit too much in one direction. And what that means is when I'm just sitting and I get into this back position, you can kind of see that I'm already a little bit rounded here. And that's because my pelvis is not in a position that is helping my hamstrings and my back muscles be able to get me into a more upright position. So to fix that, what we do is sit on the rowing machine just like you normally would, put your feet up here, and there's a couple of different techniques for this. The one that I like is just gently go ahead and lean forward as far as you can. You might feel your butt cheeks come up a little bit and then sit back down. Now you might notice I'm a little bit more upright than I was before I did that. Now the reason for that is my butt cheeks kind of lifted off a little bit and it shifted my pelvis position a little bit. Now, another way that you could do it is take your hand, lift underneath, and grab and pull up. Do that on both sides. The only downside to that is sometimes that puts us a little bit too much into a tilt forward of our pelvis, and then we're kind of at that end range for our pelvic motion, which ends up meaning that we're putting too much extension in when we are in this upright position. So it really depends on you and your body. I have a whole video on finding your seat position. You can check it up right there. But a whole video on just how to get that sitting position and what to pay attention to for it. There's a couple of reasons that this is so important. One is our hamstring muscles actually connect onto our pelvis. Our back muscles also connect onto our pelvis. Now, when we are in some of these positions like here, where I need a lot of movement through my back to get me into this front position, and then when I get back here and I need a different motion from my back and my hamstrings are in a different position, it is basically having our pelvis be in the most optimal position for both this extreme and this extreme. So because our hamstrings attach there and our back muscles and even our core muscles attach onto our pelvis, we need to pay attention to all of those. So once you get that good position for your butt, the second thing that we need to pay attention to is actually the rounding of our back. A study by Rumbin in 2005 showed that hyperflexion, which really means a lot of flexion or bending forward, was a big contributor to low back pain. So when we're at the catch, what's happening at our back? Are we really, really upright, or more in this position? Am I a little bit more forward and still kind of upright? Or am I really, really rounded? Now, I'm gonna back up for a second and put myself into the not so great position for sitting, as if I didn't change my butt position. And you can notice here, if you can on my black on blue, but I end up having a lot more of a bent position at that low back. And then if I put my butt into the good position, you can see even if I round, it's not as extreme. But the study really shows that over rounding, which often is kind of that rounding of the shoulders, really, really, really reaching forward to get as much length in that stroke as we possibly can contribute to low back pain. So when you're on the rowing machine, really pay attention to what position are we in here. If we look at it without looking at are my heels coming up and all of those different components, and then we're just kind of paying attention to the shoulders and the back for this. When we get into this position, I'd recommend having your core activated and your back stabilizer muscles more activated. So for you, you might be a little bit more in this upright position where I'm ready to go. I'm not overreaching and putting more stress on these muscles. I've got everything slightly activated, supporting here, and I'm a little bit more upright. If you struggle with this, you can take your shoulders and pinch them together to get you into this position. I am going to do, again, a whole video, so that'll be the next video on things you can do on the rowing machine to really work on this, but there's a small tidbit for you. The next thing that might be contributing to some low back pain is when you're here and you start to push with your legs. Do you push your legs out and just end up going more and more and more forward, and that handle never really moves until you kind of get to the length of what your hamstrings can do, and then you end up pulling up and pulling up to get into this position? That was it in extreme slow motion, of course, but you can imagine if you just get on the rower and try to demo what I just did. Keep your hands exactly where they are, shoot your butt out, and then try and come up. You can kind of feel how that creates a lot more demand for my core and my back. So we're putting a lot of extra stress where we don't necessarily need to during the rowing stroke. So we call it shooting the slide. So when you're pushing with your legs, if you're doing that, that might be one of the contributing factors. Again, video number 2 is going to go over some things that might help you fix that. The third consideration on the rowing machine is instead of pushing your butt back, you actually have your shoulders go first. So the first thing that moves is not really my knee position, but my handle comes back and my hips open up and my shoulders go back. And then I start pushing with my knees, and I'm kind of already in that back position. Now, it usually happens a little bit more combined, where it's I'm gonna go back with my shoulders, and then I'll start pushing with my knees, and then I still have some movement to do into that back position. That's usually what it looks like a little bit more, but I'm just trying to exaggerate it for you. So doing that, or leading with the shoulders, also puts a lot of extra strain onto the core and the back muscles. Right here, where instead of putting all of that, a majority of that force through our legs, which are our big, powerful muscles, we're basically loading our arms more and having our core and our back do most of that power to start getting that flywheel moving. So all of that is being pushed into our core and our back, and then our legs are coming in and helping, but our legs are just kind of finishing the stroke off. So instead, our core and our back took the load of it, when in reality, we want these big quad muscles, we want these big leg muscles to be able to do that movement for us. And then the core and the back, they're just along for the ride, doing a lot less than what our legs are doing. It's also going to lead to better numbers and performance numbers when you're rowing. All right, so the first one was up at the catch. The second one was about pushing your butt back. Third one was about leaning with your shoulders. And the fourth one is at the end of the stroke. So something to pay attention to is if you think of a clock, up to the ceiling is 12, and then you have 11 and 1 o'clock, right? If we think about this position here, and I'm thinking about my clock, right? I am at 1 o'clock. And you can actually think of that as well when you're in the rounding. Does that make me go more towards 2 o'clock? But I want to be a little bit towards that 1 o'clock. When I get to the end finish position, am I at 11 o'clock, or am I at 10 o'clock, or am I almost at like 9 o'clock where it's really hard to hold myself up? So if you are going really far back, where you're like this, you might be able to see right now, I'm shaking. My muscles are like really working to hold me in this position and keep me from flying backwards off of this rowing machine. So if you are doing that every single stroke, that's a lot of demand on your core and your back. And then you have to be able to get out of that position. So you're getting into and out of it repetitively. So instead, really working on that hip hinge to go from that 1 o'clock to that 11 o'clock and really decreasing where that's happening. So the second point is your rowing training program. Are you overtraining? And what that means is, are you actually paying attention to your body and realizing when it needs a break or when it needs a different activity? So sometimes we get so excited that we get to jump on, it's a low impact activity. We feel like we need to get that 30 minutes of cardio in every single day to be heart healthy and all of those different components, whatever it might be for you. But sometimes we end up doing too much. And that can actually lead to us breaking down in the first point, which is our form, but also not giving our body enough time to recuperate and heal and really get those muscles back to being happy so that they're working in a way that actually helps us while we're on the rowing machine. So the third point kind of goes with the second point, but in a little bit of a different way. So we want to pay attention to our bodies in the training aspect, but we also want to pay attention to our bodies when it comes to us having discomfort and pains. Are you feeling it during the row? Are you feeling it 5 minutes into your rowing? Are you feeling it 30 minutes in? Or are you not feeling it while you're rowing at all? And you're feeling it after you row, either 10, 15 minutes, an hour after, that evening, or maybe even the next day. All of those things actually give you information about what might be happening. Now, if you are feeling some of that discomfort later in the day, evening, or if you're feeling it the next day, overtraining might be something that you want to really focus in on and work on decreasing some of that. Or maybe it's trying to add in a stretch routine, which I'm going to talk about in video number 3 for this series. But really paying attention to, when is it happening? When is that discomfort really coming on? If you're feeling it when you are at the beginning of the row, or let's say 5 minutes in, there could be a couple of reasons that is happening. One of the reasons that you could be feeling it that early is you didn't do a warm-up that was efficient enough for your body to actually feel like it's ready for the demand of rowing. So playing around with different type of either stretching routines or something more dynamic or active, playing around with different ideas for your warm-up and not just jumping straight on the machine, or even just adapting if you already are doing a warm-up routine, adapting it a little bit and seeing which you might need more of. Some dynamic stretching, some yoga posings, nice and gentle, or something more active and demanding of your body. Really trying to focus in on what might be able to help your body transition to the movement. Second could be your form is falling apart right away. And it's not something that you pay attention to, or that you're paying attention to but not realizing that you're causing some discomfort. So if that is the case, then definitely paying attention to some of the things that we talk about on the rowing machine can help. Now, if you're feeling it more like 30 minutes or an hour into your row, and you were able to do like 25 minutes without any discomfort, try rowing for 25 minutes. Or if you're feeling it an hour, try rowing for 45 or 50 minutes. Try stopping before that discomfort comes and see, hey, you know, I was able to do this amount of time. Cool. Stay at that time frame for a little bit and then gradually work your way up. Now, usually if something is happening a little bit later, it might be that your form is falling apart and your technique and your body mechanics are changing a little bit as you go and as you're getting more fatigued. So as you build up your tolerance to the longer pieces for rowing, then you should be able to gradually increase and increase and increase how long you're on the rowing machine. So definitely try stopping before whatever that time frame is. And if you don't know what that time frame is, row, look at the clock, see how long you rowed for and where it started to happen, and use that as your guidance going forward. But fatigue while we're rowing, especially on those longer pieces, or even really sprinting really, really quickly, a lot of that often comes down to form and mechanics. There are some other reasons that it could happen, but those are some nice basics for you. In my Facebook group, I made a post asking y'all if you would like one long video encompassing everything, or if you'd like your videos broken up into smaller chunks. I also asked if y'all want to know more about avoiding injury on the rowing machine, on while you're rowing, what to pay attention to, or if you want tricks and tips on what to do on the rowing machine to help stop it or fix it, or do you want things off of the rowing machine? And it turns out it was pretty mixed. Y'all want all three. So what that means is I'm gonna break this up into a 3-part video series about low back pain. And I'm gonna do this similarly for different areas. I hope you found this useful, but in the next video, please hit that subscribe button or stay tuned if you want to see those next videos that are going to be rolling out over the next couple of weeks. But there's going to be a video, which is video number 2, on what to pay attention to on the rowing machine to help fix those things that I just talked about. Then video number 3 is going to go into some of those reasons that things might be happening. For instance, when you're at the back position, you're going too far. What might be reasons that you're trying to do that to compensate? And we're gonna get off of the rowing machine to really work on some of the things to help with either mobility or flexibility. And we'll talk about all that in video number 3. Please hit that thumbs up if you found this useful, helps let me know. And if you've got feedback, as always, let me know. I'm trying to do this the way that y'all asked for, but I hope that I'm delivering what you all want. Thanks again for staying tuned and happy rowing.